Hey guys, today we're going to be taking a look at zven's gameplay, and we're going to be looking at all of the little things, all of the little details that he does in order to succeed, and what he does as a good player. And so we're going to get right into it here. So I have played against zven, I think maybe 2 or 3 times now. And he's, in my opinion, like one of the best ADCs that we have playing on the server. So I think it's going to be pretty helpful to take a look at his game. There's been many different concepts that I've been trying to talk about, but of course with my lack of editing, going over a VOD is maybe a better way to visualize what I'm talking about. And the other nice thing about it here, of course, is that really there are many little details from the minute that we get into the game that are important to go over, and there's so many different things that you could do in a game and improve on, that it's really good to just focus in on the details. So we can see number one, this is like a challenger game. You'll notice that like everyone's leaving the fountain level 1. Nobody's actually, the smolder was a little bit late or something, but for the most part, right, especially the higher up you go, the more often people are actually going to get out on the map and try to do anything, whether it's just defending and kind of fanning out and 5-pointing to protect their jungler, or if it's taking some sort of bush control. Like you can see here that this Rakan player is taking bush control really far up in bot lane. This is also something that I like to do a lot in my games on Braum, because I'm able to cheese so heavily level 1 out of this bush. They have to walk by it in order to get to their minions and farm no matter what. So unlike cheesing in this bush, which can be retaliated on by the enemy jungler, cheesing in this bush is much more difficult for them to deal with, because they have to walk through it no matter what, whereas sometimes they can walk the other way. If you were in here, for example, or if you were in here, sometimes they can walk this way, and so they can just avoid these spots entirely, plus they're in close proximity to their jungler. So we can see, for example, that Rakan is taking priority here so that he both doesn't get cheesed and he can potentially look to cheese as well. Now zven, right, is just going for a standard kind of 5-point start here, and so he's just guarding the jungle entrances, and we can see that we have a very similar thing going on the top side as well. Smolder's the only one who's a little bit late, which is a little bit unusual for this rank. But obviously a lot of players will like wait to go to the bathroom or to get water or all these things until they're like in loading screen or in champion select. And it's really important that you do those things before you queue up, because the game really starts as soon as you get into champion select. There's many different things that you can start thinking about, how you want to change your runes, what champions you're going to pick, like swapping pick order with your teammates and being there when they ask you to, so that you can get a better pick order. Even just thinking about how you're going to use your abilities versus the other team. I talk a lot about one of the biggest things that helped me improve to get to like Masters and GM was realizing that on Braum, I need to not just be using my abilities casually as someone who's comfortable playing the champion, comfortable throwing out the abilities. I had a bad habit of throwing my abilities out too frequently. People in lower ranks play League like it's Earth. They just want to spam their abilities and get them all out there. But one of the biggest things that helped me improve was holding my abilities for opportune times to throw them, using them to counter the most important ability from the other team that I could counter. So when I'm in champion select, I can start thinking about, okay, they picked Ezreal, I can save Braum E for Ezreal ult when we're fighting in lane. And I'm going to think about how those interactions are going to go so that I'm more likely to actually execute on that, or be patient and wait for that in game. So, you have to understand that the game really starts, as soon as you get into champion select. Your LP is on the line one way or another, even if you're just going to dodge or somebody ends up dodging, right? You want to play champion select out well. I think the lower rank you go, the less people utilize trading to get the most counter picks that they can in draft. And I want to put a caveat in that, because again, I'm someone who advocates for just playing. Maybe I should put it this way: instead of saying counter picks, because I advocate for people playing champions that they're comfortable playing in solo queue and focusing on a small pool of champions, especially if you're low rank. But what I will say is that not counter picks necessarily, but having to blind pick less. So for example, I'm going to pick Braum almost every game. I'm basically a Braum one trick effectively right now. Like, again, I'd argue that I could play other champions, but you know, effectively in solo queue right now, in order to try to get challenger, I'm just focusing on playing one champion. So I don't really want to blind pick Braum, even though I'm not really gonna change my pick and counter what they're gonna do, but not being counterpicked myself by somebody who is willing to play the counter or can play a counter champion is much better for me. So let's call it, you know, not getting blind pick. I think the lower that you go, the less people trade and champion select to get less blind picks, you know, and things like that. So we can see straight off the bat that although they don't have vision, Ezreal's very aware of the fact that he could be getting cheesed out of this bush, especially because his support's not with him. So instead, he's playing to the very tippy top side of the lane, as far up against the wall as he can, so that he's putting himself as far away from the Rakan, who's potentially in here, as possible, even though Ezreal doesn't have vision of him. So a lot of players would just not be aware of this at all. And so they just, you know, walk straight through it or walk straight in the middle of the lane, and they'd get punished for doing that. But this Ezreal is aware of that, and so we can see that he's standing up on the top side of the lane, and he even throws a Q into the bush and hits it on Rakan so that he knows that he's in there. zven is taking advantage of the fact that they have lane priority right now because the Rakan's here and the Poppy hasn't shown or done anything yet. And so because they have this priority and Ezreal can't walk up, zven is securing the level 2 push by hitting the minions as much as possible so that their wave is pushing and they're going to get that level 2 advantage first. We can see that even Rakan has autoed the minions a couple of times. He probably could have done a little bit more, but he's also trying to do it in a way that doesn't mess with the CSing patterns of the ADC. So, you know, you want to push for level 2, but you have to be cognizant of the fact that your AD carry is going to go for last hits at certain times and not take the minions to a super low HP value so that it's hard for your AD carry to last hit. So when you're shoving out a wave, or when you're, you know, hitting minions to push for level 2, I think a lot of people understand now that you're supposed to do that, but they don't do a good job of it, of really microing down on, you know, I'm not getting the minions too low so that it's easy for my AD carry to CS. So they're pushing in. You'll notice Ven hasn't hit this minion. He kind of stopped pushing a little bit. And the reason why he's doing this is because if they were to push this too far, can go back and look. If they were to shove this whole wave and clear it before the enemy minion wave is here, they're just going to push it up like really far and have no space to engage if they get level 2 first, which kind of nullifies their advantage. And their bot lane will just get to sit here in a really safe spot and get their level 2 essentially for free without ever having to deal with the fact that the enemy bot lane, that zven's bot lane, has gotten level 2 first. So you can see here, he can be hitting this minion, but he's not hitting it. Why is all of the sudden he, you know, looking to trade with the Ezreal and not looking to hit this minion at all? And it's because he wants this wave to get backed up right here in the middle so that they're going to hit level 2 first because they're still ahead in the push by this one range minion. But they're the wave is in the middle, so they have more space to fight when Rakan gets W at level 2. They also potentially want to make it so that, you know, the level 2 is closer than it seems. Uh-oh, they're actually not going to get level 2 first, it looks like. Okay, so let's take a look. So maybe it ends up being a bit of a mistake. So if we think about this, if we go back and we talk about this one minion, right, I get the idea that we're going for, maybe we're, you know, we're ahead at this point 2 whole ranged minions on them. So we're just trying to delay that. And at this point, we're still ahead by like 1.5 ranged minions on them. So we're just trying to deny the level 2, you know, in a place where we have more room to fight. So I get that. Rakan has 1 stack here. He's going to have 2. Let's see what Rakan does. But Poppy's obviously going to get involved here and try really hard to shove the wave for level 2. Yeah, so they're both going to end up having 2 Targon stacks, but we'll see if Poppy is able to get more value out of them. Probably, it seems like. I mean, Poppy's even committing Q to the wave, and Rakan doesn't have anything like that he can do. And so now they're in a difficult situation because now they're actually behind in what minions they have here. And we can see that Rakan doesn't have any Targon stacks. Neither of them have any Targon stacks. So they're actually behind. But sometimes you're going to get into these situations where I was going to say another reason why they might have delayed hitting the range minion is that they actually want to bait the fact that, like, it's close. That, you know, Ezreal and Poppy will sometimes, any bot lane, will sometimes choose to kind of like stay in the pocket, just finish the minions to hit level 2. And oftentimes you can just win a trade or get them to make a mistake if they can't kill the minions quick enough. And this is actually what ends up happening to zven here. So if they finish this minion, they'll get level 2 as well. And so rather than running away because they thought they were going to get level 2 first, and so this is actually looking kind of bad for them, they try as hard as they can to finish this minion and get level 2. But you can see that because they thought they were going to get level 2 first, and then that didn't happen, and things changed very quickly, that kind of shock left them scrambling to try to last hit this minion. Zven and this Rakan were actually trying to do the same thing to them, I think, conceptually, but it didn't end up working out because of how hard Poppy was able to turn the minion disadvantage that they were at around. Obviously, I think this is a little bit of a mistake. I think Zven should have just finished the ranged minion, but that being said, of course, I didn't see this happening either. So you can see that they try to finish it, they get level 2, but Poppy is able to trade flash for flash with Zven by flashing behind him and then Eing him backwards. Okay, this is weird. So let's take a look at the fight that happens after. But of course, Poppy is at a bit of an HP disadvantage. Doesn't get the stun or anything, and then Rakan's able to re-engage after Poppy's used everything. Ezreal needs to be hitting Zven here no matter what, but Ezreal's actually in a pretty tough position to fight because Rakan can block for Zven, and the minions are actually in the way, so he has a very small window here if he's on this other side to hit Zven instead of the Rakan or the minions. Just this very small window here that's going to close as soon as they move up to their minions. You can see that Rakan appropriately blocks. I don't think that Eing behind Zven was the play, but we'll see. No, it ends up working okay. So, I mean, the reason why he E'd behind them was to just try to have a more open shot at Zven. And he ends up, flashing around the Rakan to get the Q off, which is pretty good. But, they end up trading 1 for 1. But, of course, this could be beneficial to the Ezreal here because Zven was the one that ended up dying. It looks like it's not going to be that big of a deal, though, because it's a cannon wave. So we can even go back and count from when Zven died, but maybe he just missed this one melee minion. Ezreal's going to have a pretty difficult time. Oh my god, he's just dead. Oh, never mind. Well, I would have died there if I was Rakan too. Barrier OP. So obviously Rakan's trying to prevent Ezreal from crashing the wave while his AD carry is dead. And Ezreal is doing everything in his willpower to crash the wave. I thought that Ezreal was actually deciding to suicide here in order to crash the wave, because that's how important it is to him. But it turns out that actually he can just kill Rakan. It looks a little bit funny because Ezreal was, focusing the minions down so hard here instead of hitting the Rakan initially. But the reason for this is because he's still putting a lot of emphasis on getting the wave in, because he needs to get the wave in to recall, and he's also baiting the Rakan. Obviously, this Ezreal knows his limits a little bit better than I know Ezreal's limits, since I'm a support player, and so is this Rakan, and this Ezreal obviously is pretty good at the champion. I think this is called Mystic Shot too, and the guy's called Mystic, so I think the guy might be an Ezreal player. So obviously the Ezreal just traded his HP in order to bait the Rakan in, and then used barrier in order to kill him, and is still able to get the wave. This is a really difficult spot for the Ezreal now, though, because the wave didn't get all the way in. So if he leaves here, even though he's 100 HP, he's going to lose basically this entire minion wave. And when he comes back, if zven wants to, he can still have this frozen on him because, you know, they've got a cannon minion and 4 ranged minions here. So this is like a permanent Giga Freeze. So is Ezreal going to stay? Yeah. So now that his support's here to help him, he's going to stay. He's just going to try to shove out the 3 melee minions, and then once the wave gets close enough to the tower that it's going to, you know, thin itself to the tower, he's just going to back off and leave. He's just going to abandon the ranged minions. They're worth less gold and XP anyways, and they'll die quicker to his waves, so his wave's able to shove in to the tower, and he's able to get his free recall off. Now, Poppy, knowing that his Ezreal is back in base, is probably going to look to roam mid, but probably unlikely for anything to happen there. Why? Because Poppy has a free timer where there's nothing to do in bot lane, nothing to help. They're just waiting for zven to farm this wave and the wave to bounce back into them. As for, you know, the mid lane thing, I don't think that Smolder is looking to fight. And so, you know, plus Smolder's at a HP and mana disadvantage, so I don't think Poppy is likely to find anything here. But if you've got nothing going on in bot lane, you're going to look anyways, right? Maybe you can think of it as just, I guess we see the jungler's top now, but maybe you can just think of it as, you know, like hovering the Smolder in case the enemy comes and tries to do something bad to Smolder, rather than trying to look for some sort of proactive play there. So let's take a look at what happens here. At this point, Poppy needs to return to the wave bot lane because it's very unlikely that anything's going to happen mid. And I need to go back and look at what happened. Why is this taking so long, actually? Something seems disjointed here. Is Ezreal waiting on an item or no? Not exactly, but again, it's little details that matter quite a lot. The Ezreal, like, walked out of Fountain. Oh, he pinged that his ping was 234, so it looks like he was lagging a little bit. Maybe he was like... So he didn't take a perfect recall, and what I mean by that is that you want to spend as little time in the Fountain as possible. So if we go back, it's totally fine because of your health regen for you to leave. Like, let's say he's got 900 HP here. If he leaves with 800 HP and he's got a certain amount of health regen and it takes like 30 seconds for him to regen all that HP back, you can just kind of take a look at it and very quickly and easily guesstimate, but you don't have to be exact. The point is that you should leave Fountain. We can actually go back and look at zven. Well, zven died, so we're not going to be able to see if his recall was like this. But essentially, good players are not going to wait until they have full mana or full HP to leave Fountain unless they're waiting on an item, or they, you know, they died and they're respawning with full resources. They're going to run off the Fountain, missing a little bit of HP and missing a little bit of mana, knowing that it's going to regen just on their way back to lane, and that's just going to save them a few seconds and can make a big difference on the wave. It looks like in this case, Ezreal's recall was... well, not his recall, but his time spent in base was a little bit extended. He was delayed here a little bit because he was lagging, didn't spend the whole time in the Fountain healing, and then walked back in the Fountain to buy his longsword. So he spent time like not in the Fountain healing, etc., etc. And so zven actually is able to come back and not just farm this wave under turret, but then crash the next wave because it's not a cannon wave. He's able to crash the next wave very quickly and got onto the enemy turret. Since nothing was going to happen mid with this roam, while it's okay for Poppy to hover towards mid, even if he knows nothing's likely to happen, I think it would have been better for the Poppy to swing back towards bot lane and try to catch or at least delay this wave, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So like right here, I mean, maybe he can't hold it 1v2. Actually, it's very difficult for him to hold it. So maybe Poppy just can't hold this. But you can see that a lot of times, like, let's say you're waiting here, like, you know, out of Fog of War for the blue team. You know, you're sitting over here. And, you know, Rakan walks away, which he does in this case. There's no reason why Poppy can't trade a little bit of HP to try to hold this wave for a few seconds. Now, it's not going to hold it until the next wave because their next wave's all the way back here. But it's just going to delay... You know, 1 or 2 turret shots is the difference between Ezreal getting one of these CS and not getting it. We're not doing anything mid. We're also like under leveled here as Poppy. you know, after our death, and then having that roam timing instead of being able to stay bot lane. So even if Ezreal's not here to pick up these CS, even if Poppy can't pick up the CS, I think it's better, because we know nothing's going to happen mid here, so much better to like pick up all this XP and now be like a level up on Poppy rather than not. So I think that's a bit of a mistake from Poppy. Not initially roaming, but like staying there too long, and not getting the XP from this wave, and not, you know, helping Ezreal get more of the wave. zven, very not greedy here, you know, doesn't take the whole plate, just backs off, you know, kind of at an appropriate time. He's not looking to recall because he's just come back from having traded 1 for 1. He's bought a coal. He just shoved 1 wave or whatever. You know, so he's chilling here. Not enough gold, basically, to do much on a recall there. Sorry, I have to move the... Can we... Okay. Fix the camera moving around randomly all of a sudden. Okay, so let's think about what we're trying to do next here, and let's watch from zven's vision. So obviously we saw Udyr over here in the jungle, but you know, assuming that the last time we saw the junglers was like fighting top, we don't really know where they are. We know that their bot lane came late, so I mean, I don't even remember where Udyr started, but assuming that their bot lane came late like that, we might assume that their jungler started bot side. And is on his way back. Okay, we see their jungler mid now. So we think about what we're looking to do here. Like, whose bot lane is stronger right now? If we take a look at the items, Ezreal's probably a little bit stronger, because he's got double longsword here just to the coal. He's also got tier, which isn't really going to provide much combat value, but obviously like tier double longsword's better than coal. Mostly just the 20 AD versus 7. So if we think about that, right, especially if Ezreal can find a fight where they're in open space, in other words, like not a lot of minions in their way, I think Ezreal is just stronger right now. And so the fight is probably going to go pretty decently for them. So knowing that the, like seeing Udyr doesn't really do anything for zven because they don't win 2v2, so they're just looking to farm the wave here and not fight. If you're, you know, the Ezreal Poppy, you don't know where Zac is anyways. And Ezreal is apparently lagging in this game. So they're just like letting them crash the wave and catching the wave here. Oh, he's lagging real bad. Can see that they're even going to deny a plate. So again, a lot of players here, like the, you know, the Zeri or the Rakan, would have walked up and hit this turret once in order to get this plate. But then it would have delayed their recall. And so what would have happened as a result, had they walked up and hit that plate and then walked back here to recall, they open themselves up to potentially A, getting cancelled on their recall, or B, if they walk far enough back that that's less likely to happen. If Ezreal just hard shoves this wave and they, you know, hadn't recalled when they did, Ezreal would have gotten the wave into their turret and gotten a free recall off too, which means that their recall here, where now we can see that zven has been able to go back and buy boots and electrics, you know, his recall and his item advantage that he's created would have been mitigated if Ezreal's just able to back right afterwards and match him in items. So they actually think that it's better here to get their recall off early so that they have an item advantage over Ezreal without allowing Ezreal to back, than it is to get the gold from that turret plate. And so they give it up. You know, another thing that I've heard too from a lot of high-level AD carries is that with a turret plate situation like this, it can be okay for the support to go up and hit the turret plate once so that they get the turret plate gold, so that somebody on the team is getting it, right? So that they're not just letting it get denied and go into the void. Because even if the support's recall is a little bit delayed, it's not going to be as bad as the ADC. And the ADC is going to be back to catch this wave had Ezreal hard shoved it before they get to crash it. So even if they have to lane without their support for an extra 5, 6, 7 seconds, that's not really that big of a deal. The most important thing is that they're catching this wave and making it so they can't shove. So you can split and have one person get the plate and one person, you know, hold the wave. And so I think a lot of high-level AD carry players have been saying that the support should just, you know, walk up and go get that plate for free, and then they can, you know, recall and be back to CS perfectly. That way that their team is getting the gold advantage from the plate that they, you know, kind of earned. Without, you know, messing up their recall. So you can see Ezreal tries to shove out the wave, you know, and get a recall, because now he's not going to let them have this item advantage over him. So he is trying to get his recall off. And so he's going to, again, recall on this cannon wave. And why do people like to recall on the cannon wave? Because it's much longer and harder for the enemy bot lane to shove in this cannon wave, because of the fact that it's got way more HP because of the cannon. And so this is going to give you more time to get your free recall off. Let's look at the gold here and see what zven opts to do. So he's got the wave in. He could opt to recall here and spend a little bit of gold, but I don't know exactly what he's trying to build, so this might not be that good. He could, you know, stay and hit turret here. So they get the plate here. Looks like Ezreal is a little bit slow. I mean, he misses almost this entire cannon wave, so I'm not going to say that Ezreal's recall here was very good. This is probably missing too much. He does come back with this Sheen, though, so he's really neutralizing the item advantage here. And you can see, right, this guy is a challenger AD carry player. He is lagging, so maybe this game's a little bit not representative, or maybe that was a mistake to recall at that time because he gave them a plate and whatnot. But you can see that he is very intent on keeping his item advantage over the opponent at quite a high price. So maybe it was just a mistake, but maybe he values the item advantage that much. So you can see with the, and maybe it's because Ezreal's lagging again, but for whatever reason, with the way that they're, you know, kind of conceding this lane, it could be due to the jungle pressure down here, right? Obviously, Ezreal's weak-sided right now because Udyr's top and taking grubs, while Zac is bot taking dragon. But for whatever reason, right, zven is able to take advantage of the fact that their bot lane's like not shoving the wave and kind of playing safe. He's able to shove the wave out and give his jungler the opportunity to trade dragon for grubs there. And now let's look if they look to dive. So this is looking really good so far for zven. I mean, I know it looks bad, but again, a lot of the initial damage is coming out. So we'll see how this goes. But they are in a 3v2 situation, and Ezreal and Poppy have used everything. So I think this is actually going to go okay. Let's take a look. Yep, they're just able to trade 1 for 1. A little bit unfortunate that Rakan and zven are on top of each other and end up getting blown up by the Ezreal and the Poppy. If they were a little bit spread out, obviously that would have gone, you know, even better. Maybe Poppy wouldn't have gone for it though. So interesting situation. Ven's kind of in a rough spot here actually, because the lane's, you know, reset in the middle here, but he wants to shove out and get his recall. Apparently, what is Ezreal doing? He's just not even here contesting the wave. He's just kind of safely farming. I guess his support's not here, but... So both supports have gone mid off of their deaths. Not much happened. zven shoves it out and sees that Ezreal's clearing these and doesn't have the ability to freeze. But he doesn't make the same mistake as Ezreal, so this is really interesting. Despite having a lot of gold, you know, he's sitting on 1,800 gold, you know, and obviously really wanting to spend that, he doesn't just back on the cannon wave here, because as we saw, Ezreal didn't actually have enough time to do that. Can also see that he's just scouting out what Ezreal's doing here on his recall. If Ezreal would have recalled, I'm sure he would have just let him. You know, this is another thing. It can be really good to cancel recalls. I've talked about it before. Really good to cancel recalls if the enemy has an item advantage on you, or they have a gold lead on you and they're trying to go back and spend it. Really good to cancel their recall and keep them stuck in lane and not allow them to get these good free recalls off. However, sometimes your opponent is recalling and it's a mistake for them to recall. If Ezreal recalls here, it's a mistake. Why? Because zven can come back to the wave, shove the cannon wave in, maybe even get this plate with an auto or something for free, and then back with, you know, well over 2,000 gold. And so, you know, whereas Ezreal has less than that, like a lot less than that. So if they take an even back here, or really it's even less than even, because zven would be able to get the wave in and Ezreal wouldn't. If they take it, you know, such an uneven back like that, that's obviously just bad for the Ezreal. So Ezreal doesn't want to recall there. So zven should let him recall there. Now, it looks like zven didn't, but he was actually out of vision the whole time. And he was just looking and seeing what the Ezreal did. And we see that he didn't walk at him to try to interrupt his recall. So we don't know exactly, because Ezreal ended up canceling it, having a feeling zven was there. But I don't think zven would have stopped him from recalling here. I think zven would have let him recall. You know, when your opponent's making a mistake, don't stop them from making mistakes. So you've got to know when it's good to stop their recall, which does happen to be most of the time. But there are times when your opponent goes for a recall and it's bad for them to take a recall there. And if they want to, you should let them make that mistake instead of canceling them. Either way, both AD carries are still locked into lane here with quite a lot of gold in their inventories that they're sitting on. zven's still getting the shove, but, you know, not enough that he's actually able to take a recall here. Now this wave is essentially frozen. And you can see that zven gets actually pretty aggressive here in order to get this wave in. You know, you saw this with Ezreal very early on in the early levels where he, you know, used his barrier and kind of baited in the Rakan. You can see zven doing the same thing. He's committing ult, trading nearly all of his HP because he's very committed to getting this wave in here no matter what and recalling. So he just, you know, forces this wave in with all of his tools. And he's now able to get a really big recall off because he's recalling with 2,500 gold. Uh-oh, he canceled it. That can't be right. Recalling with 2,500 gold, and Ezreal's on 1,600, and his wave was crashed into turret, whereas Ezreal's wave was not. He actually decides to stay here. I think if we look at this, why does he decide to stay? Ezreal's recalled. Can go back and think about if we knew Ezreal was going to recall or not. I think they're basically just thinking from this situation that, like, look, Ezreal has no mana, he's got 400 HP, he's either very likely to recall here. I wonder if they even saw this. Let's take a look. Yeah, they did see Ezreal recall, which is why they decide to stay. So there's a bit of lingering vision after your minions die. Can see that here. We're looking at blue team's perspective, and we can just see that lingering vision reveals that Ezreal is recalling, and because it reveals that he's recalling, zven just makes the decision to stay here and shove out this wave. This is actually something we see done mid lane a lot. Both mid laners will be really low, and a good mid laner will like walk off to the side over here, wait to see that the enemy mid laner has left, and then decide to what would normally be an overstay, right, in order to force their wave into tower and get some sort of advantage, becomes not quite an overstay anymore because they know that their opponent's recalled. They've kind of baited them into recalling. you know, it's kind of this dangerous game where they're pretending to handshake a recall but not actually doing it. And then, you know, either they stay and they're both low and it's, you know, kind of an even situation, although a bit greedy, but it's still an even situation even if they both stay, right? Imagine Ezreal had stayed here, and they didn't have this guaranteed vision, but he had just been waiting and waiting to see the wave and hoping that Ezreal had recalled. Ezreal's got 400 HP, zven's got 250, Ezreal has no mana, zven's got a little bit, etc. So it's a very even but volatile situation. You know, mid laners do this all the time, like I just said. Luckily, in this situation, zven canceled his recall because he knew for sure, because of that lingering vision from the minions dying, he knew for sure that Ezreal's gone here. So he's able to just stay here instead of taking his recall, and he's able to push his advantage there and get the wave in. You can actually see here another example where zven doesn't waste time, you know, finishing the plate here. Instead, he just lets his support pick up the solo gold from the plate, and he gets his recall off with quite good timing. So now, you know, zven spent a ton of gold. He's really, you know, on a big item spike here. Actually, Ezreal has Triforce as well. This is because although Ezreal's recall this time was quite bad compared to zven's, he was down like 1,000 gold this time. Ezreal was ahead earlier from being up 2-0, and so they're actually kind of even in items now. I would actually almost even say that the Ezreal is still stronger than the Zeri, because Triforce is probably a little bit of a stronger power spike than Static Shiv. But so they both got their first item completion here. This is fine, it's just kind of skirmishing over vision. You can see that now that Zach is down here, they're setting up a dive. So zven's just looking to set up the wave. He even uses a W here, but look at the way that he does this. He uses a W here, the zap on Zeri, but he's not even really trying to hit them. He's actually trying to force them up and towards the Rakan and the Zac. He also doesn't immediately run in knowing that they're about to dive, because if he takes turret aggro by hitting them first with the zap, he wants to be back here and able to, you know, right click just slightly off of the turret range so that he doesn't take aggro and then come back into the fight if they do get hit with the zap. He waits for the Rakan and the Zac to go in, you know, so that the Rakan's taking aggro here because he hit him with the ult. Once he knows for sure that, you know, the Rakan and the Zac are taking aggro, then he goes in and he just does his damage, and he's just able to take advantage of the fact that his junglers come down here and put this priority on him, and he's just able to get the kills and take the turret plates and the tower. And now, of course, we know, right, we were talking about, you know, quote-unquote opening up the map, a big discussion that LS has started around taking the tier 1 mid turret. One of the, you know, arguments that I would make is that when you've got a bot lane with 2 members who can do a whole lot and are very strong and very important for contesting objectives, and also your DPS for taking objectives, whether it be a tower or a dragon or a Rift Herald or Grubs faster, I think that actually taking bot tower and allowing your bot lane to move around the map more is almost, you know, that would be one of the best arguments against mid turret being such a high priority for opening up the map, is that actually bot turret allows you to send 2 people around the map in a way that can be, and the 2 people, or at least with the 80 carry, the person who's usually has the best ability to take some of these objectives. So they're going to get the turret, and then we got to think about like what we're going to do next. So Rakan immediately moves on to the next play. He doesn't even stay in and sap gold and XP from the Zeri, mostly the turret plating gold, right? He's just moving on to looking to see if he can make a play mid, which they do. They don't get the kill, but they burn Smolder's flash. So he's just immediately moving on to the next play. So now let's think about what we're going to do if we're Zven here. We're in Fountain. We're thinking about where we're going to go. We're obviously not going to return bot lane because we've crashed the wave. This is another thing I want to point out about what he did here, actually. After he takes the turret, he doesn't just leave. Let's look at what he does with the minion waves here. He makes sure that the minion wave, I see people do this all the time. A lot of times when people get this turret, they won't make sure that this minion wave crashes into the tier 2 turret. Now, if you're going to die to a gank or you're really overstaying to take the turret, you know, sometimes you can't do that. But if you can, you know, really make sure that this wave actually crashes into the tier 2 turret and they're actually having to respond by sending somebody bot rather than leaving it, or rather than being able to perma-freeze it in front of their tier 2 turret bot lane. Because the team that's losing their bot tower can often actually take advantage of that fact and just kind of have their AD carry perma free farm solo XP on a frozen wave in front of their tier 2 turret in a very safe way. And shoving this wave in, you know, negates that. So if we're thinking about this, so the dragon's coming up first, and then we have Rift Herald coming up because the grubs have timed out. And so, you know, where do we want to go here? What are we looking to do? So we're looking to, like, relieve the Ahri of mid lane. You know, because we're both threatening the mid turret with, you know, our AD carry, and we're in a central position to respond to the dragon and, you know, potentially later to the Rift Herald. So if we think about the options, right, we're not going to return bot where there's no tower to contest, and where we have no play on Rift later on. You know, and the wave was still bouncing back. So the way that we can get the most resources and threaten the most as Zven is to come mid. If we go top, then we're too far away from the dragon. The Rift Herald hasn't spawned yet. You know, so we end up going mid here. Unfortunately, because the Ahri had to recall and the Ahri doesn't have TP, looks like they're just going to lose the dragon. But Zven's just free farming mid, and now that the enemy team is potentially like resetting, they have this kill on top lane. I would like to see them pressure Rift Herald here. They just spotted the jungler bot side. Uh-oh. A lot of lagging and DCing this game. You know, they've just seen the enemy jungler bot side. They have Aurora dead. They have priority in mid. So I would like to see them go for Rift Herald here. And I think they actually are. I think Zach was just clearing his camps first, which I think is totally fine. He's, you know, he's just doing slight jungle efficiency things. Oh, they're actually gonna kill Aurora again. And we can see here, this is really good. This is one of the reasons why putting your AD carry in mid lane like this is so effective, is even though they haven't threatened the mid turret, they haven't threatened the dragon, now Rift Herald's up, Zven is able to use the priority that he created from clearing the wave in mid to actually come up here to this top fight himself and help them with the situation. Can see that Zven is not afraid here of multiple people because he knows he has the Rakan, and Rakan has his tools like his ult, but unfortunately the Zac actually backed out. I think they were okay in that fight, but you can see Zven knows that that they can play that fight out, and he's playing, you know, he's not over committing to the fight. He's not putting himself in a situation where Rakan has to go in and ult there because he wants to fight there. He's not putting himself in a situation where he's forcing his teammates to play for this fight, but he knows that it's doable, and so he's playing, you know, on the edge, hoping that Zac and Rakan do something, and they happen to not do it, so he just comes back to farming mid, right? This is like textbook example of how you play with your teammates. Zven knows that they can win this fight here, with Zac and with Rakan ult, but his Zac and Rakan aren't going for it. Looked like Rakan might have wanted to go for it, but Zac walked away. So you know, just textbook example of playing around your teammates, just, you know, staying in position to let them do it, or to let them know that you can do it if they want to do it. But if they don't, you just move on to the next play, and you'll find plenty of other opportunities in the game, especially the lower rank you are. So Zven's just going to shove this wave into the turret, and he's probably going to look to recall. Looks like he's going to get his second item completion here. Okay, so now he's got Runan's, or as I call it all the time, Runan's Hurricane. Banana Man's Hurricane. So, you know, we got zven coming back into mid lane again. So we know that, you know, in this situation, right, Rift Herald's up, but the top turret's down. So really we're only threatening mid turret and Rift Herald. So he's going to come back mid again. And they've got this pick on Smolder, so zven's probably going to look to shove out the mid wave, and if they can get priority off of the mid wave, then they can probably look to do this Rift. Or maybe they're just going to do it whether he gets priority or not. This Olaf needs to be really careful here. I think Olaf's killing him, so we'll see. No, he's fine. You can see, though, I even think zven was thinking about it, but, like, you know, zven walked in here instead of initially shoving the mid wave, and then he, like, walked around, shoved the mid wave a bit, and then, like, warded here and looked like he wanted to walk down the river. Rakan ended up coming and hovering the Olaf. You know, so why did I say Olaf looked like he's potentially in trouble here? It's because Zach's doing the Rift Herald, and so, you know, they've committed a lot of resources to the top side of the map, and so if the enemy team is going to make any sort of counterplay, there's only one place it can be, and it's on the Olaf bot. So if Olaf knows that that's the only place where the enemy team can make some sort of counterplay, you know, for him to be actively, like, engaging with the Aurora and trading with her very actively here, potentially looking like he's trying to chase her down and stuff like that, very dangerous to do that when, like, you're basically on the weak side of the map and your jungler is taking Rift. And so you see that, like, zven and the Rakan are probably conscious of that, and they're, like, moving down to try to, you know, shadow him and make sure that that doesn't happen. You know, even now, I guess the other team's just not trying to make a counterplay anymore. But, like, Zach is still top. They know that you took the Rift Herald now, so now if they didn't know Zach was there, now they know for sure. So they should look to make a counterplay somewhere. I'm really quite surprised that they went for the play on the Ahri. I think this was not the best thing they could have done. Yeah, and you can see it just goes really poorly for them. I don't really understand, if we back it up and we think about Udyr's decision making here, I don't really understand what he's doing, because Udyr's, like, one of the main people who can facilitate this counterplay, right? Since his counterpart is you know, like, occupied up in top lane. So I would have, I mean, maybe it's inefficient farm wise because he just did his Gromp, now he's going to his Wolves. I don't understand why we're not looking as Udyr here on the Olaf. You know, Rakan did the right thing and shadowed him, but I don't think they necessarily know that. Maybe they don't know Zach's on this, but okay, like, now we see that Zach's on it. So, like, now where is our counterplay, right? I guess he's looking at how far Ahri's pushed up, but I'm just thinking it's an Ahri. You know, she's got so much mobility to get out of these fights. Olaf and Ahri are both pretty extended, but Olaf is playing more aggressively, whereas Ahri's just free farming the wave and can, like, back off anytime. But I guess Udyr's just looking to do his camps here. So he's just doing his camps as they respawn again, like jungle efficiency things. You know, and then he sees Ahri here still playing up, and so now he's just looking for Ahri. He even knows that Zach is here. Wow, he saw Zach take the Scuttle Crab and still went for this, because he's got to know Zach is right next to him here. You know, and this is a Smolder. Smolder who's not stacked up, so, I mean, they don't really have a lot of kill pressure here. Yeah, this is just a really forced play. I wouldn't even call this, at this point, on the same side of the map as Zach. This is hardly a counterplay. This is just a force from Udyr onto the Ahri. To even chase her once she burned ult, and she even burned flash really early. So to continue to chase this is, I think, a little bit crazy, especially when he knew Zach was right here. So that's just a crazy play. Can see zven doing the same thing. He's here before the Ezreal, you know, using his shove on mid, and his awareness of what's going on in the game to move around. So he's getting really good farm, but he's not just perma farm. I don't know why the rest of the red team would go in here. Obviously, they just lost Udyr and Smolder. So I don't know why they think they would win this fight. They're literally just outnumbered again. And this has really just killed the game for them, right? Like, they were in an okay spot. Things are getting traded back and forth. It is what it is. But then Udyr just forces this play onto the Ahri, even after she's burned ult and flash, when he knows that Zac and other people are top. When he could probably look at the map and see that zven was missing from mid, and just gets himself and Smolder killed. Again, Smolder's not really even looking to fight. He's looking to scale, right? He's not stacked up yet or anything like that. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So Udyr goes for that play. It goes really poorly. And then we have this standoff here in the river, and the rest of his team, goes in and dies with a numbers disadvantage. So, and then that's, really creates, so if we look at before that play, can see that the gold advantage was like almost 2k, not even 2k though. I'm looking at like 1.6k gold advantage to 2k. Like, that's about how big the spread was. And then you can see, like, after this play, yeah, like Aurora just goes in and ults here. Goes from like a 1.6k gold deficit to a whopping, will actually give them time to push and see what they get out of towers and stuff off of this too. Right now it's a 4k gold deficit instead of 1.6k, and it'll be even more once they take more turrets. Again, zven recognizing that he's not going to solo take this tier 2 turret before they're back, so he doesn't like make sure that he gets every use out of the Rift Herald. He just lets them kill it and takes this good recall. This is a big difference between, really, in my opinion, even the difference between, you look at a Diamond 80 carry player, a lot of Diamond 80 carry players have great mechanics. They've been playing the game for years. They've played a ton of games. They have great mechanics, but the big difference that separates them from a really good 80 carry player is consistent recall timings that aren't putting themselves in trouble because of an item disadvantage or because of, overstaying and getting themselves killed when they don't have a lot of HP. They're just, challenger players are very consistent and efficient with their recalling, and I think that diamond players don't realize when they need to recall. They don't realize what they need to do with their gold advantage through recalling, and so they often just overstay and end up getting put in really bad situations over and over again, because consistently almost every game, because of their lack of understanding of like giving up plates or not over forcing a turret down or things like this. And zven is not just a challenger player, he's one of the best. So you can really see that in how consistent he's being with these recall timings. So after all is said and done, we can see that it's about a 4,000 gold lead that gets created off of that play that Udyr just went for. And this is another great example where we have situations like this where Udyr is doing pretty decently overall in the game. Like, he's going to look at this game and say that, like, my Aurora went 2-7, or my support went 1-4-2 at this point in the game. And you can look at those things, and especially if they're going to start losing the game from this point, these players are going to do even worse, right? Because now they're in a losing situation. League's a very snowbally game. You can look at this game as like the Udyr and say, my team played very poorly, and we lost this game because my top laner was doing really, really poorly. But actually, when you take a look, like, the game was really, what was the most significant play in this game so far was just this random engage from Udyr when he saw that the Scuttle Crab had been taken right in front of him, when he knew Zac was here, when he knew from the minimap that Zeri had priority and mid could roam up here, when he had gotten Ahri ult flash for free. Ahri probably didn't even need to do that. Ahri probably could have let him engage on her and then ulted, so that he'd be more willing to chase. And he just full committed for no reason, and through like 3k gold lead, which was the biggest gold swing, biggest single impact play that we've seen the whole game. And, even challenger players like this, I don't know what this guy's thinking. Maybe he recognized that this was a big mistake, but a lot of people, even in high elo, will look at their games and say, oh, well, this guy did really bad. And it's like, you got to get away from that mentality, because even someone who's doing well for the rest of the game can make one mistake, and that one death can be tenfold as bad as one of the laning deaths that some other person had. Even though those early laning mistakes are important, because League is such a snowbally game where the earlier something bad happens, almost the worse it is. But yeah, these situations are really bad, and it's created by that one mistake. So, red team's getting pretty desperate here. They're obviously down 4,000 gold now. They're not doing so well. And so they force this dragon. Again, I don't really know why they're getting so desperate, though. I mean, they should be letting Smolder stack. He's at 162. I guess they felt like they had a little bit of a timing window. And then, of course, it gets stolen away. Oh, okay, game over. So... we really, and there's a significant amount of time left in the rest of this game, another 9 minutes out of the 29 minutes of the game, but I really don't think we need to go over the rest of this. I think that, really the more important things that zven did here was, his recall timings in lane. You can see how he stayed to check what was going to happen with the Ezreal's recall in order to get an even bigger advantage. You can see how many plates he decided to give up in order to protect his recall timing at the right time. You can see his decision to move into mid lane after taking bot turret, and how that enabled these game losing plays to happen here, for the other team. And from like an Udyr perspective or something like that, you can see how how one mistake, even if you're doing pretty decently throughout the rest of the game, how one mistake can really throw away a game, especially the higher rank that you go. So hope that you guys learned something and enjoyed watching. Good luck in solo queue, and have a wonderful day.